Well, I spoke earlier in the show about the left's push to divide us by race, and finally, we've actually got someone from the left making a sensible decision. Maybe. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has said the Brits will not be paying reparations for slavery and climate change. His comments came ahead of the King's Heads of Commonwealth meeting happening in Samoa right now, where member states like the Bahamas and Barbados will push for trillions of pounds in compensation for Britain's sins. Joining me is GB News host Patrick Christys. Patrick, great to have your company. Keir Starmer says that agreeing to pay reparations would only result in never-ending arguments. I think he's probably right about that. But will he stick to his guns?
Well, it's difficult to believe him, mainly because the Labour Party here has spent years virtue signalling, some would argue race baiting, being on the side of anti-monarchy, pro-reparations groups, including our current Foreign Secretary, a chap called David Lammy, who is very vocal about his own family's Caribbean heritage and stood up and said, and I'm talking about him referring to himself as being someone from the Caribbean there, we demand reparations. Well, that was only a few years ago, so that gives the green light to all of these groups. The other aspect to it is that they only have to look at how the Labour government has behaved in office so far, handing the Chagos Islands over to Mauritius without a shot being fired, despite the fact they never really belonged to Mauritius. They did say that that was to right historical wrongs, so that's going to be a problem. Mauritius, of course, a close ally with China. We do also have a cultural movement in the UK, spearheaded, remarkably, by the Archbishop of Canterbury, who a while ago raised eyebrows when he said the church was going to pay £1 billion in slavery reparations. Everybody said, why? Then it turns out yesterday, his own father, great-great-great-grandfather, I should say, owned slaves. So the Church of England is now paying for his own personal guilt. So there is a push to do this, and it will be interesting to see whether or not our Foreign Secretary has changed his mind.
Yeah, just on the Archbishop of Canterbury, I did note he didn't immediately put his hand in his own pocket to pay back the money, but the parishioners' money in the plate will be used to assuage his guilt. Hey, I want to ask you about the US election because it seems, according to Trump, that the UK government is interfering. Last week, Sophia Patel, Labor's Director of Operations, went on LinkedIn asking for volunteers to go to the US to campaign for Kamala Harris. Is this interference or is it just plain stupidity?
It's both. It's both. And it's student politics now playing out on the world stage. It's absolutely unhinged and it's completely bonkers. So, again, by the way, can I just say it's our old friend, the Foreign Secretary, David Lammy, who several years ago called Donald Trump, and I quote, a neo-Nazi sympathising, woman-hating sociopath. That is now our Foreign Secretary. Our Labour Mayor of London allowed a demonstration to take place when Trump, who was then president, turned up here on a state visit. He allowed a giant blimp of President Trump as a baby wearing a nappy to be hoisted over the city of London. So this is the track record of Labour when it comes to Trump. 100 staff are now out there campaigning, knocking on doors for Kamala Harris. To be fair, I would have thought that that would make it much more likely that Trump would win. But it does now increasingly look as though Trump is going to win. And he's angry. And he's not the kind of man that takes his stuff lying down, is it? And the Labour Party now have been guilty of essentially running roughshod over our special relationship, playing a massive gamble here with everyone in Britain, especially in these dangerous times. I mean, it's an absolute shocker. It's complete stupidity. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, is trying to say, well, these are people going out there in their own time. Well, I'm sorry, that's absolute rubbish if it turns out that the Labour Party's head of operations has organised the whole thing. And is he not in control of these people? If he can't control members of his own party, his own activists, how can he expect to control the country? The only thing he has in common, may I say, with Kamala Harris is that they seem to both believe in open borders.
Well, look, if it encourages you a little bit, Patrick, our ambassador to the US, Kevin Rudd, has said the most outrageous, horrible things about Donald Trump. So if Trump gets back into the White House, you guys are going to be out of favour and we are going to be out of favour as well. But, I mean, it's hardly a way to endear yourself to the likely next president of the US. The UK is supposed to be a great ally. It's very short-sighted.
Yeah, it is. And also the Democrats are not really are friends. They are massively pro-European Union. They're very pro-Germany. You only have to look at some of the things that Joe Biden has said about Britain in the past. I mean, he was even pro the Republic of Ireland because someone, a century ago or whatever, one of his relatives came from there, which means he now hates us, apparently. Which is ridiculous.
Patrick,
the only comfort
Patrick,
is he
sorry,
might not know what day of the
I'm
week
going to have to interrupt. I got to interrupt you, Patrick, because we got to go. We're out of time. But I appreciate you joining me tonight.